Hello, salam alaikum, and happy new year to everybody. I will be this week's host for Nature Show. I'm Aaron. I am still joined by the wonderful Rahid. However, he cannot be in the studio today. So we're going to get straight into things. First and foremost, let's say a wonderful hello and happy new year and a salam to Rahid. Hold on.
Walaikum salam, Aaron, and assalamu alaikum to all of our wonderful listeners. I'm so sorry I'm not in the studio, but I'm off site. But the wonderful, talented co-host of mine, Aaron Matthews, is in the studio and is handling things. Happy New Year to you, Aaron, and to everyone else. How many days are we in? Are we 7 days in? We're 7 days into the new year. How are you coping with 2026 so far?
I mean, I'm quite optimistic at the moment. We're a week in, I feel like at this time of year, you still have all your New Year's resolutions and all the goals you want to achieve.
Well, I'm a little bit older than you, so I don't really do New Year's resolutions like a young guy like you. But I think if I were to say what are my New Year's resolutions, they are remain positive, remain peaceful, and love nature.
I like that. I was going to say, I like that. And I think that sums up the Nature Show quite nicely. That's what we do while we're here on Inspire FM. We talk a bit about nature, talk a bit about ourselves, talking about religion, culture, and faith. And that's what we're doing today.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you. But if I can just, by way of an introduction, just say that it is a very happy new year. Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great 2026. Stay blessed and stay connected with nature and stay happy and fruitful in everything you do. So I guess today's show is just all about a new year for nature and thinking about what we will want from nature, or what nature will give to us as a gift from God and a gift from Mother Nature, with regards to it being winter time and how we're going to transition out of winter time. But the winter sometimes feels like it's quite a tricky place to be, but we know from an Islamic perspective and also from a Christian perspective that the physical signs of springs are just a short time away, but actually the creative power and mercy and wisdom and, dare I say, promise of God is that it's only through the dead of winter that can spring come. And even within there, as I'm saying that in itself is a joyous, wonderful thing that God has given to us, that God resurrects after death into light and also resurrects out of the cold into the beautiful winter. So I just wanted to give you and all of our wonderful listeners that, and I'm sure you concur with that fully, Aaron.
I was going to say, I completely agree. I think winter's quite a nice time because it's the beginning of new beginnings. I feel like we look at spring as that, but I think that's the result of hard work, right? And I think that hard work starts in winter. And it definitely does for nature and how we look at New Year's resolutions. It also does for us, like you said, we have goals and intentions. And I feel like a lot of our audience can relate to, and I'm sure we want to hear from you guys actually about your New Year's resolutions and what your goals are. So I think a big one of the ways exercise, right? Everyone says that this new year. I'm going to start exercising more. I'm going to lose a bit of weight. I'm going to be really active. But then we look outside and it's quite cold. I think all that goes out the window around then.
It does. But every minute by minute, as we know, in winter time, just only 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, at the height of the days of winter, our sunset time even was at 3:55.
Wow.
And already, sunset has already pushed back 20 minutes, which in itself is a wondrous thing. So those small shoots are coming. So actually, what you said, Aaron, in terms of, having intentions to exercise and do that, be connected with nature, going out for a walk, although, can I just say to everybody, be very careful out there. It is wet and icy and slippery. But perhaps when the ice does go away a little bit, or if we can stay safe at the same time, going out and being in nature right now is actually a really positive thing. Correct, Aaron?
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely a good time of year to do it. I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. That there are some advantages to going out in winter, other than walking off your big Christmas meal, which I'm sure some of us listening may have done with. And if anyone wants to tell us what they had over the Christmas break, if you celebrate Christmas, if you don't, call in at 01582 481822, and we want to hear all about it from you. So yeah, going back into that, there are some benefits, like starting off with a brief walk. Like you said, it's cold, it's icy. Please don't go outside for too long, but this is a good way to start if you think, I want to start slow, because winter forces you to slow down a bit.
Yeah, and as we say, these small intentional steps actually form part of the bigger picture. And I think going slow and being quite methodical about it, that definitely is a good thing. So I agree with you. Whatever you do, there is a benefit to it. And short walks are a great idea.
I couldn't agree more. And I think winter's got some good stuff to offer. Like, let's talk about it. For the last week, it had been really frosty and quite cold. And I'm very guilty of looking outside and thinking, nope, I will not be dealing with this. But I have to say, from the safety of my window and when I was outside being brave, it was quite pretty out. It even snowed yesterday.
Yeah, the snow has been a bit, it's fluctuated. I must admit, I had a trip up north earlier on in the week, and it's wintry up there. It's Birmingham North. It's really, really wintry.
Oh, wow.
Quite bitter. So it is quite difficult. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about nature and soil and water and these sorts of things as well. I wonder whether you want to touch upon the purpose of frozen soil and water retention, or water that supports frozen soil.
Definitely. I think there's a big benefit to wintertime, especially from a conservation aspect. And we look at this as the perfect time of year to plant trees. So if you are going outside being brave enough to tree plant, now's about the right time, because it's so cold. And the water and this time of year it rains too. That water in the soil actually helps roots establish and help new trees start to grow. So then we do get to springtime, we do see flowers and fruit. So this is the ideal time of year to begin your growth. A bit like your New Year's resolution, now's the time to start. Same for trees and flowers too.
I can imagine there's probably a few of our listeners out there who have got gardens, and they have got trees and shrubs and plants that are not looking the healthiest, but actually come spring and summer they will be very healthy. So if there is anybody out there that wants to start thinking about doing a bit of gardening, just in terms of preparation, what do you think that might look like, Aaron?
So I guess this time of year, it's getting your watering in now, because there's that level of retention. Sometimes in comparison, in like the summer, water will just evaporate straight off. You're in the middle of July, there's not a lot you can do. Whereas winter, now's that time to plant your new plants, water them, feed them, maybe give them a little trim, because, all the leaves are off anyway. So you want to conserve as much energy as possible. So for those of you who are looking to tend to your garden, now's the time.
Great idea. Absolutely. I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things here. From a Quranic perspective, which are really important. And in chapter number 41, verse 39, God Almighty says that one of the central signs of the earth coming back to life after barrenness is this winter spring phase. And God Almighty mentions this, and God Almighty mentions this by saying that the Quran uses some really vivid imagery of the soil as it quivers, as it moves itself when the rain falls upon it. And when the rain falls upon it, this is a very explicit way of talking about nature's revival, in a way in which we have the day of resurrection. And I just want to touch upon that, because very specifically, God Almighty is talking about the soil and the earth reviving. As we mentioned, we ourselves will be revived. And it's water. Water is the key. Water's the key. So I understand what you say there about giving your tree or your plant or your shrub a trim, putting some food out for those birds. And I know that you're going to talk about that a little bit later. But actually, the the value of water. I mean, we're 70% water. The earth is 70% water. So what else should we do except love and nourish and cherish the water that we have?
Exactly that. And I think you're right. It's that life-giving element of it. We've talked about it quite a lot across the radio show because its importance can't be overstated, honestly. It's just amazing to see how much it can do for us as people and how we have to maintain that water level, and the same for plants and nature around us. So as much as it is a bit cold outside, take heart in seeing the rain fall, 'cause it's quite a nice sound as well. That's another winter activity I recommend. It was raining quite heavily last night down here in Luton. I don't know about up where you were, but I thought this is quite a nice sound. And I know it's doing the plants and animals some good too.
Absolutely, and it's the sustenance and the abundance of that water that really is a supporting feature. But yeah, so Aaron, what sorts of things might we see in and around when we think about winter habitats and, I don't know, plants and creatures rather, that we would see? Is there anything you want to give us a bit of an insight into there?
Definitely. I mean, winter's actually a great time for birding. I'm becoming a bit more of a bird watcher day by day and trying to take it in a bit more. But winter's actually a great time for anyone who does have a bird feeder or a bird table or is just brave enough to step outside this time of year. You'll be quite impressed with what you see. I talked about rain earlier on, and you'll often hear blackbirds sing right after the rain. I believe the sound carries better in like the moist air. It's quite sweet. Or, for example, you could have a massive flock of blue tits, grey tits, cold tits. They tend to join up in these big feeding flocks over winter to get some more food in. So for anyone who does have a table or a feeder or even a little bird bath, now's the time to get it out because you're more likely to have visitors in your garden. 98% of gardens report seeing blue tits around this time of year.
Wow. 90% of gardens. Is this UK gardens?
Yeah, this is UK gardens. 98. It's an insanely high stat.
Wow. And what is it specifically about the winter or this time of year that brings them out?
Well, they're out all year long, but now we get into kind of how food is available. In spring or summer, comparatively, it's a bit different. You know, there's fruits on the trees. There could be more insects outside at the moment. Whereas being in a massive flock, it's easier to spot one food source and it benefits the collective community if you all flock to it together, and they're not as abundant as they once were. So again, a great time to kind of stay back in your garden and see who visits, because that food is really appreciated this time of year. Again, going back to Christmas dinner, a big meal this time of year, definitely needed.
Do you think those birds like a turkey trimming, a halal turkey trimming?
I mean, turkey might raise some moral issues, but I'm sure the foxes would love a good halal turkey trimming. Bit of cranberry sauce in there, they'd be happy.
David Attenborough's Wild in London season is playing at the moment at a well-known TV station near you. Just plug and turn it. And he and David Attenborough, he is a sir, right? Yeah, Sir David Attenborough. Absolutely. Sir David Attenborough does specifically talk about the amount of wildlife that we have in London or in cities in the UK, and foxes are one of those animals that are very well spotted in and around Luton. We see them all the time.
Oh, definitely. I don't think we take in what's so interesting about them, however, because, you know, we're quite used to seeing them, but it's quite rare you see an animal find success in among the presence of people the way foxes have. You know, they are the most widespread carnivore on the planet.
No.
Yeah,
really?
That's right. They're in every continent except Antarctica. You can find them literally everywhere. And just because they've survived better in our presence, it's quite a bold thing to say, but we've actually seen populations increase in urban areas compared to rural ones.
We have this fascinating symbiotic relationship with the fox.
Yeah. I was going to say, they're quite happy to see any food we leave out intentionally or unintentionally, or any unwanted visitors we draw in intentionally or unintentionally, and take care of it.
It doesn't matter too much, I joke, that there's a little bit of excess food left around. That's why there's so many chicken and chip shops in Luton.
Speaking of foxes, actually, you make a great point I wanted to touch on. It's about winter walks and what's so special about this kind of frosty, wet weather. Something we can do in winter that we can't really do on a summer's day is as you're walking, you can actually see tracks, prints, and kind of really get to know a bit more about the animals in your area. Because we often see foxes if we're lucky and we're out and it's nighttime. Whereas if you're on a walk, you might see not a lot unless you've really got your binoculars out and you're spotting and you're keeping vigilant. Whereas if you look down this time of year, you can see kind of stories unfold. You might see deer tracks and they've got that famous kind of cloven gap, or fox prints, bird tracks, all sorts. And you kind of get a sense for the pathway you're using being a little highway for nature as well.
We are quite lucky in Luton in that I know we spoke about this recently, but the level of green spaces in Luton is perhaps a little bit low. I'm not 100% sure there, but it's roughly about 17% of Luton. All of Luton is green spaces.
Oh, wow.
And that includes parks, that includes gardens and playing surfaces. So it's quite low. But actually, our relationship, our symbiotic relationship with predators and deer and other things, I'm not calling deer a predator there, is quite a healthy thing. And we've got the wonderful Luton Hoo and the grounds all around that, which are really, really fantastic, with a lot of deer and other animals in and around there. So in terms of paw prints and footprints, that we have, bird prints, I should say, perhaps not footprints, that we have, although they are a footprint.
Yeah, so they got low, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What sort of lessons can we learn about that, other than the obvious one that they're alive and they're around? But what sort of behavioural things are we concerning ourselves with when we see these foot and paw prints?
So the interesting thing is you can learn a lot. You can learn where they're going and for what exactly and how long they've stayed, or whether they're running or walking. You can even see multiple individuals at once. You kind of get this kind of detective story of it all where you're trying to piece together what's going on. For example, let's say you're behind, I don't know, an ivy bush, one of the last things that's still green this time of year. You might notice footprints around it. You might notice maybe a leaf has a little nibble. Or for example, let's say you're on one of our many chalk hills surrounding Luton. You might notice, again, these footprints and then quite a big hole in the ground. And you might realize, we have rabbits. I never really took it in. So there's always a story to everything, I like to think. It's almost like a little soap opera. What are these animals doing? And that's kind of what we see in these documentaries. Their stories weave together, and I think the footprints play a key role in that. Are they walking? Are they running? Are they just stopping and taking it in the same way we are on the walk?
That's fascinating. I'm just wondering whether to the untrained eye, that whether or not somebody would be able to distinguish between a stationary animal, a walking animal, a running animal, a chasing animal. I wonder whether or not the naked eye would be able to, or the untrained eye would be able to differentiate.
To the untrained eye, maybe. Sometimes it can be quite dramatic because you imagine you've got these two sets of hoof prints and they're a certain distance apart, and suddenly you notice there's a big gap between the next set, like you've taken a massive stride, like you're sprinting. But again, it's about stopping and really taking it all in. Or, for example, you might have had really neat paw prints from a fox, and suddenly they're less neat in how they've connected with the ground, and you realize, it's running, it's walking a little faster, something might have disturbed it. Or you see two tracks next to each other, and then you know two individuals are together if they're both, come at a similar time.
It's a little bit like a nature whodunit.
It's exactly like that. It's like playing outdoor Cluedo. And again, it's a game you can only really play after a rainy day. So this time of year is perfect for it.
Is there any specific equipment that you would need? In other words, is it good to have binoculars? Is it good to have any other specialist equipment?
I mean, binoculars are always good in general. For this particular task, you're happy in using your own two eyes, honestly, because you're looking at stories that have already passed. But binoculars are great, and I'm glad you touched on them because we actually are in prime time for bird watching. So I forgot to mention this. This is a pretty obvious one. After autumn and in winter, leaves are off the trees. So it makes it a lot easier to see birds and kind of get used to figuring out what's around you. Because, I'm sure you've had it where you're on a walk, you see a bird, it sees you, and now it's in a tree somewhere, and you can hear it, but you can't see it. That feeling is kind of eliminated in winter because often the tree is bare.
Absolutely. I was just about to touch upon that we can use different senses in slightly different, because tree foliage, there is all the amount of leaves on a tree and the amount the amount of greenery is really reduced. So actually you can probably see much more than you might otherwise see. And the bird song is really important in terms of the way in which those birds are communicating to one another and what they're trying to say, particularly, for example, if they are in a flock.
Exactly. There's a lot of communication you can pick up just by listening, and that doesn't require any special tools. And the interesting thing is it's different kind of messages that are being communicated at different times of the year. A lot of birds make contact calls in the winter. It's more of kind of, hello, is anyone there? If I had to describe it, like, you see your mate down the road, you shout after them, they turn their head, they can't really make you out, and now you're both shouting in any which way. Kind of like that. So it's quite interesting when I guess, the stories behind these things. Or you might have noticed in Luton, I've heard it a lot recently, parakeets. It's been quite strange, but I can hear them more.
Tell me more. Where and when have you heard and seen parakeets?
So I would say for anyone in the audience who lives, especially around Wardown Park, coming up towards Sockingstone Meadow as well, and that part of town along along Old Bedford Road, definitely I've seen them around there along the river, and it's quite a distinct sound. I'm not going to attempt to make it now, but it's quite loud, it's quite clear, and you notice it because it doesn't sound like any of the birds around them. And they're bright green, I should mention this. These are ring-necked parakeets. They are a stunning shade of green, and they hang out in these massive flocks, and you can usually hear them around town because they are really chatty, is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, very noisy indeed. Yeah, and very bright.
Yeah.
Always bright or mostly bright?
They are mostly bright green. It can be a little dull. Very rarely, I think they can be blue as well. I've seen one in blue, not locally, just in general, because they are also kept as pets, hence how they ended up having these massive wild flocks. But mostly bright green. But it does tend to blend in if you're in Wardown Park and you're looking at a big conifer tree and you kind of see this green figure among the dark green.
Yeah, I sometimes wondered whether it was more green-yellow than blue, but I'm happy to be
green, yellow, green, blue. There's a good range. You're right.
Indeed. Okay. What else might we be looking out for in the winter months that wouldn't have been around usually?
This is something I think I've picked up being outside over the last few days. And this is something Luton's quite famous for all year round, but I feel like I've noticed it a lot more as we've had a few days with clearer skies, like nice, clear blue skies. And I look above my head and we can see a red kite or maybe a buzzard, for example. And I think we've talked about the kite on the show a few times before and its success story, bouncing back from extinction, kind of becoming the icon of the UK, our most interesting raptor. When I say raptor, I don't necessarily mean Jurassic Park. I do mean bird of prey. They'll hunt small mice, rodents, rabbits a lot, but they are so cool and so interesting to see soaring above their heads because they're kind of just surfing along the wind. And I don't know, I find it quite calming because they look very relaxed. I'd say for a bird, they're not really flapping their wings. They look very, very laid back.
Kind of the cool bird of the sky.
I'd say so. I think they're pretty cool.
Very cool. Absolutely. And I think what I might consider, or what we might consider, is that because there is not that much going on in nature because of the cold nature of being winter.
Yeah,
It could be that we notice things more now because it's more explicit, and so
definitely.
therefore what we see, we're seeing much more intentionally, and
I
then we
think
can
you're right.
relate to it a bit more.
I think we definitely take a bit more time to be reflective. I think, like, those trees beginning to grow, those flowers taking roots, winter forces us to kind of slow down and take things in. And we're all very guilty of not doing that. And we are approaching the ad break just now. But before we do, I want to say, for anyone who's been listening, thank you so much. And if you want to call into 01582 481822, please do after the break and tell us about what you've been seeing throughout the winter. I've been Aaron, and I've been with the wonderful Rahid. This is the end. For the first half of the show, please come back. We look forward to seeing you.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM. Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum all, Hassan from Gujarat. Been on the Urban Cube Show, great platform to discuss Muslim community issues, and I hope Inspire FM continue doing the great work that they're doing.
Visit Luton's biggest halal supermarket, the Grand Bazaar Supermarket on Lee Grave Road, for an unbeatable range of fresh halal meat, poultry, fish, fruits and vegetables from all around the world, and all under one roof. Plus everyday essentials, basic healthcare items and even medicine. Everything you need, all in one place. That's the Grand Bazaar Supermarket, Lee Grave Road, just next door to Shell, Luton's largest international supermarket. Open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and view online at grandbazaarluton.com.
Greystone Solicitors are committed to protecting your rights and fighting your corner to ensure you get the best possible results. Specialising in immigration matters, employment issues, family matters, personal injury, medical negligence, civil litigation and housing. Need help with your immigration problem? Greystone Solicitors provide free immigration drop-in clinics every Friday. Call Greystone Solicitors today on 01582 343 453 or visit us at 275 Dunstable Road, Luton, LU4 8BS and begin your journey towards justice today.
वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी हफ्ते के 7 दिन सुबह 9 बजे से लेकर रात 9 बजे तक खुली रहती है। हमारी सर्विसेज में शामिल हैं ट्रैवल वैक्सीनेशंस, स्टॉप स्मोकिंग, डायबिटीज चेक, बच्चों की ग़िज़ा और बहुत कुछ। लुटन और डंस्टेबल में फ्री प्रिस्क्रिप्शन, पिकअप और डिलीवरी सर्विसेज भी की जाती है। इसके अलावा आप मेडिसिन के इस्तेमाल के लिए फ्री मशवरा भी ले सकते हैं। वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी 198 B Dunstable Road, Luton, corner of Westbourne Road. Telephone 01582 419 432.
Be inspired. Inspire FM.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of purpose and impact? The East of England Ambulance Service is recruiting now. Are you seeking training and a new career or looking for a challenge in development? Start your career for life with East. Apply now for roles in frontline emergency operations, control rooms, support services and non-emergency transport. Visit www.eastamb.nhs.uk and click Join the Team. Make a real difference. Join the East of England Ambulance Service and start your career for life.
Are you looking for a guaranteed return on investment? With Wanama's ongoing Sadaqah fund, your £1 a day turns into food for the hungry, water for the thirsty, and care for the orphans. We work in 20 countries, including Gaza, Yemen, Uganda, and more. A continuous charity, and 100% of your donation goes to those who need it most. Invest in this life for your akhirah at www.wanama.org.uk.
Do you feel at times that you just can't cope anymore? Do you find raising a child in today's society challenging? Join me in my parenting show where I aim to discuss these challenges of raising our children, ranging from nurturing sentiment to building the leaders of tomorrow. Every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. live with Sister Navid on Inspire FM or via our Inspire FM Facebook page. The parenting show at 7 p.m. every Tuesday evening on Inspire FM.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 5:30.
Hello and welcome back to The Nature Show. I am this week's host, Aaron, joined by the wonderful Rahid Salam, and we are talking about nature in winter, touching on the faith and culture elements of it too, and why you should be a bit more active this winter, as hard as it is to be, because even the animals don't take too much of a break. Though in this half, I do want to talk a bit more about those that do decide to sleep winter away. So I'll be honest, sometimes I look outside, I feel a bit cold, and I think, I mean, maybe I could just sleep until spring. I'd be all right? Rohit, do you think about that sometimes? Do you think about hibernating?
Well, I'm Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Well, thanks, Aaron, for that question. Well, I'm a bit of a winter baby, so I always really loved that time of the year. However, I'm becoming a bit more of a person who appreciates the warmth a little bit more, and the water a little bit. The longer days a little bit more. But as with most things in life, most things in life, I like to take a God-centered approach to this and think about what is it that God wants from us, and also what is God given to us. And the wonderful thing about the winter is that we know that we are going to start to see the emergence of vibrant colours, new leaves, flowers, and lush gardens. And when we think about that, that in itself is the beauty and the wonders of God's further gift to us, which is the gardens of paradise. And so we've got the frozen earth, which accepts the blessed water, and sooner or later will give life to the gardens. So I try to challenge myself not to be too much in hibernation mode, but a good bit of hibernation mode is good for you, because it actually gives you an opportunity just to reflect. And as you know, and I know, and as you practice and I practice, when you've got longer winter days, actually that's a moment for spiritual reflection, spiritual retention, to see, well, where am I at? What can I ask for? What can I be thankful for? What can I repent for? While we're waiting for the spring to do its thing. So it's not such a bad thing to hibernate if you're spending your time hibernating successfully.
I really like that. I think it's nice to talk about it in terms of a meditative approach, because you're not so much hibernating as you are meditating. And you're right, some of you is God's gifts, because, we're very fortunate to not be like, I guess a hedgehog, for example, that decides, well, there's nothing I can eat this time of year that means I should be awake. I'm just going to tuck myself in and see what the world has for me this spring. We've been blessed. And, it's in Psalm 23, it talks about the Lord being my shepherd and having all I need. And it's the idea of knowing that we're provided for, and we're very blessed as people to see that no matter what time of year it is, God is there for us, supporting us in different ways. And I like the way you've put it. You are hibernating, but you're also reflecting. And I think that's kind of where the whole theme of resolution, restart comes into. I feel like you found a very, a blessed way of having a resolution. And I think that's the approach I'll be taking this winter. It's just reflecting more on it, but not truly hibernating. I like that, because I think some animals are taking similar approach and actually staying for the winter. I mentioned blue tits earlier on, and typically and historically they would move further south across the country for the winter. But now they will only travel as much as about 20 kilometers. So we're talking maybe no more than here to St. Albans, for example, for winter. And that's in the extreme cases. Some just stay where they are because they found all they need. So again, big thank you to anyone in the audience who does have a bird feeder or a bird table, because you are making winter for a lot of animals easier. Even certain butterflies.
That's a really good shout out, actually, to have that spirituality and that connectivity, but also find connectivity in providing for others, which is a really good thing. I really like that. I think we need to put a video out, and I'm sure there are loads of videos out there, but it might be an idea for Aaron and I to put a video out of how to make your bird feeder or how to make your bird box or these sorts of things. So watch out for that coming near you soon. I think I've just given us some work.
I think you have.
But it's good. It's all good.
Definitely. It's a good idea, and I think it would be nice to see the various ways you can do it, because I'm glad you touched on this. There's various different methods you can use, and a lot of them involve recycling or already using plants. Nature has already given us like pine cones or so many different various techniques, and I think it's great to see. Actually saying that, I was at work and people were using willow to weave bird feeders out of, and it was so impressive to see how much kind of creativity can go into it. You know, you can be caring for the earth and recycling while feeding the animals, or you can be getting hands-on stuck in with nature, crafting to make a feeder, or you might take an approach I think I'd probably like more and finding a random pine cone and turning it into a feeder. But it's so much to do just within that one task.
Isn't it strange sometimes that we think about being sustainable as being quite clever?
Yeah.
But actually, the world and the earth itself is continually renewing and recycling itself through the seasons and through the times. And so actually, what we're doing isn't real. I mean, it is sustainability, but it's an artificial sustainability, not to be confused with other artificial things.
I get you.
Artificial unintelligence. That's another show.
I was going to say nature and AI, a special episode. I think I've given us even more work now, another episode in the making, but you're right.
Indeed.
You're right.
We can learn so much.
Oh, go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to just finish my thought before you come back in. The sustainable element of using nature and recycling nature, that's actually what nature's doing. It's bedding down, it's recycling, and it's doing something. So everything we can use, for example, as a bird feeder, we can find out there. You don't necessarily have to cut up your Rice Krispies box or use something else that you've got. Let's use the natural materials, because those natural materials themselves have got all the properties that you need.
Exactly that. I think that's the amazing thing when we talk about recycling and renewability. You're right. We describe it as this kind of creative process, as us being quite inventive as humans, but God, being the greatest of designers, has created an earth in which recycles itself naturally. You know, we talk about leaves falling off the trees, but that rotting back down into the soil is what's helping new flowers pop up in the spring. It's what's helping those trees regain nutrients, and it's spreading all around the woodland through that network of roots and fungi. It's so amazing to see God's design in all of it.
I was just reflecting a little bit, if you'll allow me, on what the phrase you just used, God being the greatest of designers. Absolutely, God is the greatest of designers, but God, and I know that you didn't mean this, you absolutely did mean this, is that that's one facet of God's uniqueness, in that God is designing and fashioning out of things that he himself created. So, you know, we design based upon God's design and God's materials and God's creation. So I just wanted to pop that in there. And of course, we know God's got so many attributes, so many attributes and qualities that we couldn't even begin to fathom or understand. But we're only given the little bit of knowledge that we need, because we couldn't handle the rest of it.
Exactly that.
You were talking a little bit there about fungi. What is a fungus?
Okay, now this is actually quite a hard question, because it's not quite a plant and it's not quite an animal. It's another kind of organism, so it is alive, and they typically will feed off, they'll feed off kind of like other nutrients from maybe, let's say, other rotting things. So for example, I talked about leaves falling off of trees and back into the soil that will then help things like mushrooms grow. I'm sure our audience has gone on a walk and seen a mushroom and thought, what is that? It's kind of a plant, it's kind of not a plant, it's its own separate thing. It's the best way I can describe it without rushing to artificial, you said not intelligence, but we're not going to go there. So
You're quite right. A fungi is part of God's creation, in that it has its own biological kingdom, yeast, mold, mushrooms, magic mushrooms, as some people may call them. These are organisms that are neither a plant or an animal and have their own unique way of acting and behaving, in their own unique properties, including the sort of properties they have that are nutritious. Because we all use yeast and mold and fungi and mushrooms when we bake cakes, or have a Sunday brunch or whatever. This is the sort of stuff that we use. So yes. So what's the benefit of fungi in the winter into the springtime, Aaron?
Oh, I'm so glad you've touched on this, because it's one of the most amazing things. I've talked about it briefly in another episode, but I'm gonna try to explain it the best I can. So let's say we picture, for example, a woodland maybe. So if in the soil you've got tree roots, but what you have is also this network of fungi. This is a mycelial network or a mycorrhizal network. But what it basically does is, to save everyone a science lesson, is it acts as almost like internet in a way that it transfers information. But instead of information, it will be nutrients from plants to flowers and water as well. That's what they'll do in exchange for sugars from plants. So it's quite interesting. They'll take the sugars out of the trees from the sap and then spread nutrients and information around the forest. They can even tell if a tree has been cut down and to like remove it from the network. It's so impressive the role they have. Or on a less detailed, they might break down rotting things. So for example, those leaves that hit the ground, they will help break down the leaves and have a nutrient spread back into the forest, or a fallen log. And it's amazing what they can do, because like you said, we eat them. The animals, especially insects this time of year, will eat them. And you'll probably notice them a bit more on your walks this time of year.
Perfectly spotted. I joked that we use yeast to make cakes and bread. Absolutely we do. But in nature, these are the things that really support the roots of your plants or your trees, and do actually allow that flow of nutrients and that strength of nutrients as well.
Yeah. So I encourage everyone, as they're walking out around, to take a look. If you're seeing a fallen tree or maybe an old log, just give it a turn around and you might see something interesting. And I want to encourage everyone outside. It's not like finding mold where you're not supposed to. It is actually supposed to be there. And they're quite pretty looking. I'm quite guilty of looking in my phone, and like a lot of my gallery recently, I was on a walk, is just all different kinds of fungi I need to identify. You get quite stuck in, I find.
It's interesting you said that, because as soon as you said if you're on a woodland walk and you turn that log over, the first thing I remember seeing is woodlice. I always remember those creepy crawlies, but because they need that that moistness. But of course, within all of that are those fungi which are growing and supporting and protecting that whole habitat.
Made a great point though about woodlice, and that's also something I would tell people to look out for on a winter walk. They don't necessarily take a break for winter either. If you are brave enough to flip that log, you will find a whole host of life making it work, and that talks more about that balance and that setup God has provided, that even though the tree has fallen and it has died, it is still serving the forest and helping out and benefiting everything around it for up to maybe 200 years if it's not removed.
Wow, up to 200 years?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a long time.
It really is.
You'll see all manner of microorganisms, spiders, creepy crawlies, and other bits all working together to support this phase into the springtime. But also for 200 years, I can't quite get my head around that.
It's strange to think about. If you went on a walk and saw a log, it would just keep being there and keep helping out. And we've talked about those woodlice, or maybe different kinds of beetles burrowing into the log, the fungi spreading their roots deeper in and just helping to break down. A tree is a really strong thing. So after all those decades and maybe even centuries of a tree is quite old of hard work, it takes a while for it to disappear. It's cool to think they have an impact on the forest.
Absolutely. Shall we move on from microorganisms onto other animals that you might see in and around in the wintertime. And I'm thinking specifically of frost, and thinking particularly of the beauty of what we might see on a frost or a frosty morning.
I think that's a great point to touch on. I think I'm going to go back on a bit of a bandwagon I have, especially when it comes to this particular animal. I think wintertime is the time I almost appreciate spiders the most. I say almost because it doesn't beat out whenever there's a fly in my house. That's when I appreciate spiders the most. But winter's a close second because I just love seeing the dew and the frost on a spider web or on a cobweb, especially on a walk outside or in the grass. It's lovely seeing art. Again, God being the greatest of designers, it's amazing to see that what, almost looks accidental as a creative hand is behind it.
Yes. I love a spider web and I love a spider, but the best time you see them is in the cold. And when we think about it, these amazing creatures don't need central heating. They don't need to be inside with a blanket. They're out there, they're doing their thing. They're using the frost, they're using the water, and they just carry on doing what they're doing. And there's something really fantastic and special about the frost in and around a spider's web and the kaleidoscope of colors that you get. The kaleidoscope of colors, I think
I like
that you see when you get the different, especially a low sun. You see a low sun or sun coming up and just melting a little bit of that frost is a really beautiful thing to see. The patterns and the sort of colors and the textures that you get. I mean, that you get all of that from nature.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. I didn't think of it that way, but you're right. There's definitely an artistic element to winter in seeing the sun come up, because I've noticed, I feel like we have a lot of clear days in cold weather. I don't know why that is. Anyone listening, if they could tell us, that'd be great. Please call in 01582 4818 22 and tell us what kind of colors and patterns have you noticed across the wintertime. But it's really nice to see actually, because we mentioned the sun setting and rising, and we tend to notice sunsets a lot more as they're a lot earlier. But they're slowly coming back to us. We're getting more and more of the daytime. But it is amazing, really.
And I just want to mention that, of course, the spider is a major creature that we know that is mentioned in the Quran, and we do know the story of the people of the cave as well, which was guarded with the spider's web, if memory serves me correctly. But we're running short of time, so I won't go through the full ayah of that Quran. But this wonderful thing about the beauty of it's actually the thing that I think we're trying to get across is that these microorganisms, which are the fungi and the mold and the mushrooms and these small vertebrate insects that we've got, they play a vital role in keeping everything going. Because whilst we think to ourselves, okay, we're not going to be in the garden, we might not go out as much, there aren't any flowers and fruits about in the abundance that they're about, these microorganisms and these small insects, they keep going, and without them we wouldn't get from winter to spring to summer. It just would not happen.
Exactly.
To appreciate them as 365 a day annually doing their job since the beginning of time.
You're right. Nature definitely doesn't take a break, or if it does, it's still part of a cycle that flows. And I think as people and as stewards and custodians, we've described ourselves as before, looking biblically and Quranically, we have a duty to nature as caretakers and as man who was planted in the garden to take care of it and work the earth. We should see how we can benefit that system in the winter, because there are a few things I would encourage our audience to do this time of year. I've talked about it across the entire episode, but I do recommend just a brief winter walk. It is cold. Please take it slow. Be reflective. Don't truly hibernate. Instead, meditate on things. But just a brief walk and take it all in. The colors, the patterns, all of it. The frost on the ground, leaving footprints, as almost like a memory in the ground. Or, for example, putting your bird feeder up, I would recommend it. And I feel like it'd be quite a fun craft activity. On top of that, it would just, it add a bit of color to your garden that you'd see interesting things flying in and just appreciating it as it comes.
For sure. Right, well, we're in the last 5 minutes of the show, so should we just carry on with our activities that we can do for the remaining 2-ish months of winter, 6 months of winter, officially, but we do know that it remains cold up until the end of March. Oh my goodness, I'm already picturing a very cold and fresh Ramadan that we're going to have from in or around 18th of February through to the 17th or the 18th of March, give or take.
I mean, it's a blessed time of reflection, like you described earlier on. It may be quite difficult with the cold weather, but I encourage our listeners and yourself, Rahid, to take heart.
Indeed. So the first thing that we mentioned was the bird feeder, and Aaron and I, and maybe others, are going to put a small video together of how to make a really cool bird feeder. Aaron, we've got some work to do.
We do.
We'll catch up at the weekend, and we'll do that. Okay, so we're going to film ourselves making a bird feeder from the Ultimate Designers designs, which is everything that we find around us. So that's the first thing. But I guess the second thing is that, ladies and gentlemen, when you make your bird feeder and you put it in your garden, you've got to be very intentional about what you're putting in or around your bird feeder and what are you looking out for. So Aaron, what are the sorts of things that people might see in their garden once their bird feeder is out there?
I would say mostly, well, it depends what part of town you live in, actually. I should stop. Because let's start. If you're maybe Wardown Parkway and you're particularly by the river, you might have some tropical visitors in parakeets, and you will hear them coming and spot them instantly. They are bright green, almost a yellowy kind of color too, maybe ranging in the blue if you're really lucky. And they will be very grateful. And I can't describe the noise they make as singing, but they'll be chattering the whole way along. You might have some songbirds like tits, like robins, like blackbirds. You may have some pigeons if you're a bit more unfortunate, but I want to remind you, they are grateful regardless.
They are indeed. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is have a look at those birds and have a look at those do the bird feeders and the birds. The second thing is that have a look around your garden or around your local area and see what sorts of footprints you see. See if you see any footprints, and maybe take a print, take a picture, sit down, squat, and see what you see. Be as quiet as a mouse.
Yep. Pardon. And imagine that story behind it. Have fun in making your nature whodunit and thinking, what is going on here? Is this a daily commute to work for something? Is it on a run? What's it doing out there?
Absolutely. I think the third thing we've got here is we talked about taking a walk and being quite intentional with taking a walk. Taking a walk in the morning is a really good thing, correct, Aaron?
Definitely. I mean, health, well-being benefits. We've talked about the reflectivity of it. Digestion. I know I've made a lot of jokes about Christmas dinner, but it actually does aid digestion, taking a slow, small walk. And for those of us who will be fasting soon, I'm sure at iftar, once you've broken your fast and you've had quite a big meal, a walk might not be a bad idea.
A walk might not be a bad idea. We'll all be walking to the masjid to the mosque for Tarawih prayer in the evening. Inshallah, we can do it. You can do it, people. Yes, so we'll be doing that. We've also got one of our ideas is to think about what is it that you're seeing out there and actually try to learn the names of a tree or a shrub or a plant that you see out there. What sort of trees and shrubs and plants are we thinking are native to Luton?
There's a lot to list, but I'll try and keep it brief as we are coming towards the end of our show. I mean, one thing I think is quite dynamic, and you'll notice this time of year, even though it's harder to tell because there's no leaves, you'll see an oak tree. It's big, it's got a good bit of character, and I think the way you're going to spot it as a member of the audience now, look at the bark, it's quite wrinkly. I think that's the thing I say. It's quite a big tree, and if it's a good age, the bark is super wrinkly, and the trunk even begins to twist at times.
Indeed, it does. You're in the studio, so I'm going to let you carry on because you're in charge of the clock, not me.
Right. Well, I mean, we've got about a minute or so left, so I just want to say quickly to our audience, thank you for watching this week's episode of The Nature Show, and we will see you next week in the studio, live at 5. We hope you've enjoyed your time here. I've been Aaron, that's been Rahid, and please go out on a winter walk, take in some nature, reflect, meditate, don't hibernate. We appreciate you as listeners, and learn the name of a bird or a bush, or I would say a flower, but it might not be the right time of year. Go on a walk, do a log pile, maybe even a bird feed if you're feeling brave. I want to say nature appreciates you. We appreciate you for listening. Please come back to Inspire FM. Rahid, do you have any last words from the last 20 or so seconds before we close out?
Well, listen, everybody out there, thanks so much for listening. Winter, just like every other season, is a blessed time. Do embrace it, do enjoy it, and let us know what you see out there, and let us know what you experience. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll be telling you what we see as well, and then we'll report back very soon.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Isha.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज